What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about Immortal Thor #1, written by Al Ewing with art by Martin Coccolo, as well as colors by Matthew Wilson. This is the comic that I have been waiting for. For those that don't know, I'm a huge fan of Al Ewing. Al Ewing might just be probably my favorite writer, like, ever. Like, there are a lot of writers right now at both Marvel, DC, Image, Boom Studios, all over the place. But across all of the great writers that are out here doing work in comics right now, Al Ewing is probably consistently the GOAT. If you don't believe me, I have recently just picked up a copy of the Immortal Hulk Omnibus. And this is, while not necessarily a sequel to the Immortal Hulk, this is actually more of a spiritual successor. And if that doesn't make any sense, then all you really need to know is this. When Al Ewing wrote Immortal Hulk, what he did is fundamentally change the way you think about the Incredible Hulk. Hulk became more than just a brute, a monster. He became, in a roundabout way, not only the stuff of nightmares, but he also became probably a more sympathetic character than you could ever imagine. Now, I said the Hulk. I didn't say Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner got a lot of love and attention, as well as Sunshine Joe and all the other Hulk personas. We learned so much more about the Hulk than I think we ever have. And a lot of Hulk's origin and history was just recontextualized, and honestly, I feel updated in a lot of ways and just made way much more sense. Not only that, but Immortal Hulk felt like an epic. It felt like a saga of some sort. And that is what Al Ewing is doing with Thor. He's taking Thor, recontextualizing some things about him, and honestly, in a roundabout way, kind of bringing Thor back down to brass tacks. He's taking Thor and reminding people who and what he used to be. Thor used to be a character who wasn't a brooding, brutish character. He was honestly the antithesis of what the actual mythological Thor was. He was a much more jovial person. He was always happy to see his friends among the Avengers. He loved being on Earth. He enjoyed the company of humans. And he was never at any point really a jaded person, except for if you go back to his younger days. Al Ewing is promising to recontextualize all of that, but also bring us back to that premium Thor of yesteryear at the same time. We are showcased exactly what it means to be Thor. When we see Thor, not only is he happy when he's amongst humans, not only does he defend humans, he's also proven that he's an ally to mutants. When we see at a certain point where Orcus just shows up, because Orcus is everywhere now, Orcus is going after mutants, and he just takes time out of his day to go and make sure that Orcus learns not to mess with mutants, at least not when the Thunderer is hanging around. Not only that, we get to see him take on the Frost Giants. We also see him take on one particular Frost Giant by the name of Screamer, who is at this particular point referring to himself as Utgard-Loki. Now, if this doesn't make any sense, in a roundabout way, while the term Utgard is mostly meant as the capital of Jotunheim, it's also a way to refer to somebody as the Uber Loki. It's not exactly a one-to-one same translation, but for the sake of Al Ewing's Immortal Thor series, that's pretty much what you can take it as. This person is claiming to be the ultimate Loki. And while that character gets pieced up in about roughly 1 or 2 panels, that isn't really what matters, because for one, that is not the true Utgard-Loki, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. But when we get to that point where we witness Thor taking on these Frost Giants, we see him deal with them in ways that it's so amazing. It is so much fun to read, just witnessing him talk to what presumably we believe is the Frost Giants. We believe he's talking to them when he talks about how he's disappointed in them, and then to turn around and realize he's not even talking about the Jotunheim Giants. He's talking about the storms that Screamer is commanding, chastising the storm as if it were one of his own children. And just, it's so good. It is so good. It's something that honestly, only Al Ewing could do and make it make sense. But the real draw here is what I mentioned earlier. There are new villains that have been introduced in this, and we don't really know a whole heap of a lot about them. And honestly, I don't have that much information because, like I said, this is literally just the first issue, but I will give you as much info as I possibly can just based on previous Thor history and what tidbits I can glean from what we have so far. First and foremost is we're introduced to a new character by the name of Utgard-Loki. Now, Utgard-Loki, as I said earlier, is the ultimate Loki. It's supposed to be the Uber Loki, an alternate version of the same character that just hails from beyond normal existence. Utgard in this particular instance, while normally, as I said, it's typically meant to be the capital of Jotunheim, in this instance, Utgard is actually just another plane of existence. It's also later referred to by another new character who we're also introduced to in this issue called Utgard-Thor. And Utgard-Thor is literally supposed to be the ultimate version of Thor. And in this, he tells us that Utgard is the land of true things. And when he says that, it seems like he means it quite literally because he refers to Earth and the realm of Midgard as a false world. If this is the case, that means there is an 11th realm that we didn't know about, which is interesting because originally there were only 9 realms. It wasn't until the character Angela was introduced and brought over from Image Comics back when Todd McFarlane and Neil Gaiman had that little legal beef over who really owned the character Angela, and in fact it was Neil Gaiman. And once he won his case, he literally just handed Angela over to Marvel, and that was when she was introduced in Thor comics and revealed to be Thor's secret sister that he never knew he had. But the realm that she came from was heaven, and heaven was added later as the 10th realm. So now it seems they're adding yet another realm, so it won't just be 10 realms anymore. It seems like we're gonna be getting an 11th one called Utgard. And while technically this could be an 11th realm, there is a later point in the story that actually mentions that this is a realm that is not a realm the way that we count realms, so it'll probably still keep it as though it's just the 10, but I guess Utgard will be like an unofficial 11th realm. But all of that was an aid of saying that both of these new characters that are brought in, they are in a lot of ways, just as much as I keep saying that they are the ultimate versions of the character, that is in all aspects, because Utgard-Thor, or Thorinos as he also calls himself, he has complete and total mastery of thunder and lightning, no different than Thor, but he seems to command a different kind of thunder and lightning and storm that Thor cannot connect with. Just the same as how if any other character in the Marvel Comics universe tried to use storms and thunder and lightning and rain and all that other stuff, if they ever tried to attack Thor with any of that, even if it was the X-Men's Storm, an Omega level mutant who is literally considered a goddess, even if she tried to attack Thor with thunder and lightning, it wouldn't really do anything to him. And honestly, he could probably turn her own weapons against her. And I know a lot of people probably do not want to hear me say that because, you know, technically this is a Storm Stan account, but I'm just going to be real with you. That is one of those instances where I would be foolish to think that Storm would have any level of ability to turn Thor's own namesake and power against him. Not to mention, Storm and Thor get along quite well, so there's very few instances where they would actually be at odds with one another. But what I'm trying to get back to here is that Thorinos is able to turn the storms against Thor, and that's what makes that earlier scene in the issue hit that much harder, because when you go back and look at how Thor is literally able to talk down a storm that is being conjured by Screamer early in this issue, and literally when Thorinos hits him with his own thunder and lightning, there's nothing Thor can do about it. Al Ewing literally tells us that the lightning and thunder that came down and struck Thor in this issue, the reason why Thor couldn't do anything with it or tell it to go away or command it in any way is because it wasn't his to command, because it is a foreign storm and has another master. And with that in mind, those who have thou not struck thine like button with the force of 100 Hulks shall face the might of Blerd. And if thine villainous soul has yet to click subscribe, so that way thou'st might know the truth about the Immortal Thor going forward and keep up with all my coverage over all things regarding the X-Men, Batman, Superman, Black Panther, Moon Knight, Daredevil, thou shalt click the red button and tap thy notification bell. That way thou shalt not miss a thing. And with thine own obligatory channel plug in the middle of the video, now we can get back to talking about Immortal Thor. These Utgard versions of Thor and Loki, they are referred to as not just gods as we see the Asgardians or any other characters in the Marvel Comics universe. These characters are referred to as the gods of the gods, meaning these aren't just your random regular gods. They're even referred to as the real and true versions of Thor and Loki, insinuating that the Thor and Loki we've always known are not really the true Thor and Loki, that these are who Thor and Loki are actually supposed to be, their counterparts, just in a lesser form. Who's to say if that is actually true or not? I don't think what is being called into question here is whether Thor and Loki are the real Thor and Loki. I don't really believe that, but what I do think is happening here is these characters are going to be tested in ways that is going to make them question themselves one way or the other. We know that Loki has been going through a lot as of late, trying to change, trying to become the god of stories, no longer wanting to be the god of deception and trickery and mischief and so on and so forth. And Thor, for a long time, has been fighting with whether or not he's truly worthy, and not even just worthy of lifting the hammer. He's past that now, but it was really more about whether or not he was worthy of being king of Asgard, being the All-Father, and he's slowly growing more and more into that role with each passing comic. This is probably gonna make him question, and that's probably not good. Another thing that comes up in this issue is that Utgard-Thor, otherwise known as Tornos, keeps referring to something known as the Wheel. Think about when Thor twirls his mighty hammer, what is the shape that it makes? Makes the shape of a wheel. And if you need a shot of reference, Al Ewing and Martin Coccolo actually reference how Jack Kirby used to originally depict Thor twirling his hammer if you look at it, and that is exactly what it looks like. It looks like a wheel. I feel like that's the Easter egg reference behind it all, but ultimately the wheel is very likely Utgard-Thor's version of Mjolnir. Now, we do see an actual physical wheel in this issue, and I'm gonna go on a limb and say, yeah, that's his version of Mjolnir. We've yet to see him actually use it, but I think it's safe to say that's the case. Utgard-Thor, or Tornos, as we can also call him, he seems like he is no one to joke with. He is able to command storms on such a level that he spreads a massive lightning and thunderstorm across the entirety of New York. He strikes down the Statue of Liberty and completely demolishes it. He also strikes down tons of planes, buildings. He is causing all kinds of torrential downpours and floods. And he is so powerful that even when it comes down to the point where Thor channels all of the Thor force with himself, all of the Odin force within himself, and he unleashes his power upon Tornos, Tornos doesn't even flinch. As far as Tornos is concerned, Thor may be the Thor of this world, but he himself is the real one true Thor. And I can't wait to learn more about this guy. I did bring up Utgard-Loki. That is actually something that's of note here in this, because earlier in the issue, we actually do see Loki, and if you're confused as to why Loki is a woman now, that's one of those things. Loki can kind of be whoever and whatever and however they choose to be. So that's one of the situations where also some things that are brought up in this, they're all going back to the Al Ewing series that I believe wrapped up either earlier this year or late last year, which was Defenders Beyond, where Loki had teamed up with Blue Marvel. That's kind of where all that comes from. But in this issue, we do see Loki for a brief moment where Loki actually helps rebuild the Bifrost, something that was destroyed early on during the Donny Cates portion of the previous Thor run. That entire Rainbow Bridge was completely demolished by Thor, but Loki, after reconstituting the Bifrost, mysteriously disappears, never to be seen or heard from again for the rest of the issue. And it's not until later in the issue where we bump into Utgard-Loki, and it's one of those situations where I wonder what exactly is going on here, because when regular Loki reconstitutes the Bifrost, one of the things that comes up is Al Ewing begins apologizing ahead of time. There's this section where he does something that I wish more writers reminded the readership and audiences in general, any creative in general, just reminded their audience that at the same time, and I love this line because it's so perfect, Al Ewing says that for every storyteller is a liar, a trickster, and a traitor, and that our first allegiance is always to the tale, and that to trust us is to risk your very heart. I love this line because it's very prophetic. We are reunited with Loki. We get to see Thor and Loki back together again and possibly off to start the latest in their adventures where they're not at odds with one another. And yet, when Loki reconstitutes the Bifrost, Loki disappears, fades away, actually not even fades away, just completely disappears. And it's at this point where Al Ewing reveals that they're sorry, or rather the narrator is sorry that this has happened. Whoever this narrator is, who I actually wonder if that narrator might actually be Loki themselves. Either way, Loki has disappeared now the Bifrost is back, and it's seemingly implied that the cost for Loki to recreate the Bifrost was Loki's own life. So Loki may actually be dead now. And while death is an inconvenience for Asgardians, it's safe to say that Loki's not 100% gone, but I think what's happening here is that Al Ewing is just making room for these new characters to come in and setting Thor up against both an Utgard-Thor and an Utgard-Loki without having the help of someone who could potentially make this job easier for him. But to get back to Utgard-Loki, I know I keep bringing him up, and I haven't really talked about this character very much because Utgard-Loki is the one we spend the least amount of time with. We don't really see Utgard-Loki until the very end of the book, where we're reintroduced to Thor's mother, Gaia. Now, I know some people wanted me to talk about this a ways back because there was an instance in Jason Aaron's Avengers where it was revealed that the Phoenix was actually Thor's true mother, and that is both true and not true at the same time. And this was actually even more addressed and, fleshed out later on in the Avengers of 1 million BC one-shot. Now, while yes, Gaia was the one who gave birth to Thor in 1 million BC, King Laufey, the leader of the Frost Giants back then, who ultimately is the actual father of Loki, Laufey had successfully assassinated Thor just after he was born. And it was the Phoenix of 1 million BC who took Thor into her arms and unleashed a solar flare beyond Earth's orbit, and those fires of resurrection is what gave Thor new life. So while technically the Phoenix is not actually Thor's birth mother, in a roundabout way, she's as close to a birth mother as Thor could ever hope to have that isn't Gaia. So the long and short of it is Thor actually has 3 moms. And for those who are unfamiliar, if you're wondering where does Gaia come into all this, Gaia was Thor's true mother who was revealed all the way back in 1980 in Thor number 300. For the longest time, Gaia has been the one true mother of Thor, and until we get into the Phoenix business that I just talked about. All we know about Utgard-Loki is that he seems to find the idea of Screamer pretending that he is the Utgard-Loki and actual Loki. They seem to find both of these characters incredibly laughable. Utgard-Loki's main goal seems to be to test Thor, and not just test him, but try to see if Thor has what it takes to protect the universe. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, well, he's a hero, and he's the All-Father, of course he has the power, but that's not really what this is about. This is about making sure Thor can actually stand the test of time, to see if he can actually stand up to literally any and everything that Utgard-Loki has to throw at him. This version of Loki seems to be of the belief that they have more than enough power to, as they say, utterly destroy Thor. That if it was vanilla Loki's mission to test Thor, to push Thor to his absolute limits, Utgard-Loki can take him beyond that. At this particular point, all we know is that whatever the relationship is between Gaia and Utgard-Loki is that, for one, it seems to be a sibling rivalry of sorts. This Utgard-Loki has yet to actually reveal their true name, and as far as we know, at least in terms of the Marvel Comics universe, Gaia only has a couple of siblings. Technically 3 if you count Chthon. Chthon is technically one of Gaia's brothers. Another one that most people might be familiar with, called Set. Alongside Oster, these were her elder god siblings. They were supposed to be the gods that existed at the beginning of the universe, and then creation kind of sprung out from them. What Gaia's role is here and all this is going to be pretty interesting, because Gaia doesn't really show up in a lot of different things. She seems to be on the side of Thor in all this, though she's seemingly unwilling to intervene in any of the things that Utgard-Loki is warning her is going to come, though that may change at some point. Now, I've just talked a lot about Thor's mother. If you're wondering where Odin is in all this, or why Thor's hammer seems to be back to normal after being cracked for the better part of a year, the reasoning behind that was actually sussed out in the recent Thor 2023 annual #1, where it was revealed that Thor just simply fixed the hammer himself. He's no longer beholden to the idea or the mystery of whether or not he is worthy of holding the hammer. He has grown beyond that now, and he has complete and total control and mastery over the hammer itself. And if you're wondering, is Odin still within the hammer? That is not the case either. When Thor threw the hammer into Nidhogg during the Torunn Grunbeck part of the Thor run that just recently ended, when the hammer came back to Thor, Odin's soul was still trapped within it. And we would later learn that Jane Foster, aka Valkyrie, had helped Odin's soul cross over into Valhalla. So if you're wondering what happened with all that, well, now you know. But anyways, that's everything I really wanted to talk about with Immortal Thor #1. This book is amazing. It's an awesome kickoff for this series. I look very forward to this. I hope it gets 50 issues, just like the Immortal Hulk series. Hopefully like 50 issues and maybe a few one-shots here or there. I honestly can't wait to see this. This is amazing. I love seeing Thor back in the classic Jack Kirby fit. I love seeing Thor just being a more jovial character, except for, well, this latter part, because he's about to get wrecked. He's getting his cheeks clapped very soon, and it ain't gonna be good. It'll be fun to read, but it ain't gonna be good. Well, not for him. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you tap that notification bell, because I'm always posting new videos, plus live streaming every Saturday. So make sure you tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss any of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Immortal Thor #1. Keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.